Hey everyone, this is Mario Godoy and this is Herbert Gonzalez.
Good afternoon.
We're with the Godoy Law Office Group. Welcome to our first Facebook Live video. And for today's video, we were thinking about just basically going through. Herbert meets with most of our clients that come through the door. The other person that you might also meet is Noah. Now, when they're meeting with people, they get a lot of common questions during the initial interview. And so today we're going to cover some of those answers. So Herb, during some of those interviews, what's one of the questions that you commonly get?
Well, Mario, usually on marriage-based petitions, one of the biggest questions is, where should I get married?
Okay, so that's a really good question, right? Because I think a lot of folks that come from Central American and Hispanic communities, there's the idea that some people get married in court and they get married legally, and then they get married in the church, and they consider that second one really the marriage. But for purposes of immigration, you just need to get married in court. You don't actually have to have a church wedding in order for us to start that process for you. So are there any other questions that you get?
Yeah, actually, there's a big question is, what are the consequences for working without actual authorization?
So the immigration law basically says that if you worked without authorization, that you are not allowed to move forward with a green card. Now, there are exceptions, and that exception generally takes place for anyone that's considered an immediate family member. An immediate family member would be like a parent of a U.S. citizen. It would be a child that's unmarried and under 21 of a U.S. citizen, and it includes the spouse of a U.S. citizen. So in those instances, even if you worked without permission, the government can waive that, and you can move forward and get your green card.
Okay. Yeah, and then another question that we receive quite frequently is, people come here and sometimes they are on public assistance or some kind of public benefit. They want to know if there's going to be any consequences for that.
So that's something that has been a new concern, I think, that's been going on this year. Under the Trump administration, many of you have potentially heard or you've seen on the news that they may find you inadmissible, meaning that you would not be able to move forward with getting a green card if you've used public benefits. Now, that rule is being used in the consulates outside of the United States. It hasn't yet become effective inside of the United States. So what I would say is that if you find yourself in this position, I think that you should definitely talk to an attorney about what you've been using and how that might affect you. And that would also include if any family members, so say any children. A lot of the times we see people who use all kids, for their child's insurance plans, or anyone else that is in your household that's using any disability plan. That would be something to bring up to your attorney.
I see. And a question that most people have also is that when they're actually being petitioned, they want to know, do they have to actually leave the country in order to get approval?
Right. That's a great question too. It's really case specific on what your facts are. I would say as a general answer, if you came in without permission, there's probably a high percentage that you will have to leave the United States. Now, there are examples of exceptions all over the place in the law. So, once again, that's like one of those issues that you really need to speak to an immigration attorney about before you take any action, because I've had people that have come to us here at the office, as you know, and they think that they have to leave the United States and that their case could take 2.5 or 3 years. And we've been able to find loopholes. One great loophole, to give you an example, would be anyone that might be a family member to someone who's serving the military or has served the military. There's a program called Parole in Place that we've used to cut down that time and allow them to get their paperwork here in the U.S. But really, to answer that, that's really what that initial consultation is all about, is figuring out what that person's options are.
Great. And how about sponsorship? The concept of having a sponsor. Do we need more than one sponsor, or do we just need one?
Right. So in any case, the person who's petitioning, they need to be the sponsor they need to do the I-864. Now, in certain instances, those folks won't qualify financially to be the sponsor. So in those cases, you are allowed to bring in a joint sponsor. You could have someone else come in. They don't necessarily have to be a family member. As we're moving forward right now under the Trump administration, we're finding that sometimes the adjudicators, the government's requiring that there be some type of family relationship, but the law doesn't require it. And now the other thing too is that you can also sometimes count the household income of other people that are living in the same household. So there's a myriad of different options, and I think that's really the key thing of this isn't just filling out forms. This is also looking at what options are available, and some of them aren't really that plain from reading the forms.
Also, when many people that come and look for help with us, they actually have children that are U.S. citizens, and a lot of them want to know whether or not the child can actually petition for them.
Right. So once a U.S. citizen child hits 21, at that point they could petition for their parent. Now, being able to petition, I've always explained to people, is like just getting your ticket to get into the venue, but you still got to go through the bouncer, and that's really where those rules regarding admissibility come into play. So, if I were to look at it, yes, can your child petition to you once they're 21? Absolutely. But will you qualify to be able to get that immigration benefit? That's really what meeting with an attorney would be all about. In Section 212 of the INA, it just covers a whole myriad of lists of reasons why the government could deny that application, even though your child technically could apply for you.
I see. And speaking of inadmissibility, a lot of questions that we have is, people come here and they will get convicted of a DUI. Is that something that would prohibit them from actually being able to get approved for legal permanent residence?
It shouldn't. So DUI is not on the list. We'll see that often enough. But if you were just currently arrested, or that case is still pending and open, it could be that the government officer that's looking at your immigration case will want to see how that case finishes, will want to see that you complete the sentence. But that's really sometimes on an officer by officer basis. Now, we're seeing a lot of DUIs are affecting in deportation defenses as to whether someone is allowed out of immigration jail. But as far as getting your green card through the family-based immigrant process, it's not a hindrance.
Okay. And speaking of deportation process, people come here and they're not being detained while they're in removal proceedings. And one of the biggest questions that I get posed is, will I be able to get work authorization?
Right. So that just really depends on the type of benefit that you're applying for and the application that you're applying for. So in the instance of, you're getting your green card here in the United States through the adjustment of status, in those instances you can apply to get employment authorization. In deportation proceedings, certain applications, certain defenses allow for the person to apply for that employment authorization card to allow them to work. But if someone were to have to do the process where they're going to have to go to the consulate, in those instances, that person would not likely be eligible for employment authorization, and they would have to wait until they come back with a green card. But, that's, once again, immigration is just very factual, and that's why it's important that even if you've met with an attorney in the past and they told you this is what the law is and you're not eligible, that you're constantly checking every other year, or at least every year, because the laws change, programs change, and people become eligible for different things that they didn't think of.
Many of our Spanish-speaking clients that come in looking for help, one of the biggest questions that I get posed is, I know of a notario. So, why should I use you as opposed to a notario?
So, in a lot of Hispanic countries, they break up the attorneys between attorneys that do litigation and go to court and attorneys that do transactional work. And those transactional attorneys are called notarios. So, in the United States, to be a notary, right, you don't have to be an attorney to be a notary. And in fact, a notary is not allowed to give you legal advice. And you can check the government website. They have, pages of information that they give for free when we go to immigration to the offices. They have posters up there telling them, the difference between a notary and not be scammed by one. It's just very important that you understand that in the United States, to be a notary, you send in an application, you might have a criminal background check, but that's it, you get a seal. To be an attorney, you would have had to go to law school for a number of years. You would have had to take an examination that tests you on all the laws that are available. And then, there's also the background checks that go with that. But it's also important to know that you can't just also go to just any attorney. Just because someone has an attorney by their name does not mean that they specialize in immigration. So, like here in the office, we're constantly going to places like the American Immigration Lawyers Association. Every year, we take the firm to one or two or sometimes three different events to learn, more about the immigration law and what's upcoming. We're constantly studying it. Now, if you do real estate transactions, or you do, contract work, you're just not going to have that base of knowledge to be able to tell someone, hey, this is what the newest thing is in immigration law, and this is how it applies to you. So, I would advise you guys all to, be concerned if you want to ever use a notary. When you talk to an attorney, find out what that experience is and whether they've done work like yours before. And, really just do your homework on what's going on. And if you reach out to us, one of the things that we can offer is we've drafted like the 10 questions you need to ask before you ever engage immigration services. And, we can send that to you for free if you are interested.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mario. I think the answers to these questions are very informative.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We'll see you soon. Please give us a call or contact us. Click any questions that you have. We'll be sitting there ready to answer.